So here's a wild thought. What if identity politics was never even a real thing? That's the provocative argument we're going to unpack today. The idea that it's all just a myth, a kind of social construct that's now starting to fall apart. Let's dig into how this viewpoint is being argued. And this quote right here is the core belief driving this entire perspective, that the whole framework of identity politics is basically a myth. To really get our heads around this skepticism, we need to look at a pretty powerful label that the speaker says completely shaped their own experience. Okay, first up, the myth of identity. The argument really kicks off by looking at the immense pressure that comes with societal labels. And that brings us to the model minority myth. Now, the source doesn't see this as a compliment at all. They see it as a cage, a constant pressure to perform a very specific version of success. And it's this pressure, they argue, that really exposes a fundamental flaw in the entire identity-based way of thinking. Next, we get into a personal reckoning. You see, the speaker's own career journey is what brought this whole theory into really sharp focus, and it's what led them to reject that identity framework completely. So what we hear is this personal story about feeling totally pigeonholed in liberal media environments, where they were expected to play the part of the model minority. They describe it as a role they just couldn't live up to, which created this constant feeling of not measuring up. But then, the experience was totally different, they claim, in a conservative media setting. The argument here is that their identity as a minority just wasn't the main event, and for them, that felt like a surprising and welcome kind of professional freedom. So, part 3, Two Worlds of Media. The speaker takes this personal story and really blows it up into a broader critique, painting a picture of two completely different media cultures. So, according to this perspective, you've basically got these two opposing worlds. The left is portrayed as this progressive bubble that has strict linguistic gatekeeping, policing the words you can use and the opinions you can have. In contrast, the right is described as being much more open to debate, consistently having people from the left on their shows and allowing their own staff to disagree. Okay, part 4, the identity industry. Now, you might be asking, if this framework is so flawed, why is it still around? Well, the source argues that the answer is pretty simple. There are some very powerful incentives at play. And they even have a name for it, the identity industrial complex. It's described as this massive system that doesn't just promote identity narratives, but actually profits from keeping them going. So what are the perks of being part of this complex? Well, according to the source, it's a pretty powerful mix. We're talking money, prestige, access to elite circles, and an easy narrative that makes complex issues seem simple. Plus, it gives you a feel-good moral position. And here's the crucial point they make. This isn't just about ideology. It's a seriously lucrative business. The source really emphasizes that this whole complex is exceedingly well-funded, which suggests there are powerful financial forces that have a real stake in keeping these ideas front and center. But this whole established system, or this game as the source calls it, well, it's now facing a direct challenge, and it's coming from people who are just refusing to play by its rules. So what does it actually look like when someone refuses to play this game? The source gives us a specific, pretty high-profile example that shows a direct rejection of these unwritten rules. So here's the anecdote, and it involves Donald Trump. The story goes that when he called a group of bomber pilots guys, someone corrected him for not specifically mentioning a female pilot who was there. His reported response? We're actually not playing this game anymore. And this is held up as a perfect example of someone rejecting that linguistic gatekeeping we talked about earlier. And all of this brings us to the core tension being laid out here. We've heard the argument that identity politics is a myth, that it's an industry, and that it's a game that some people are now flat out refusing to play. So that leaves us with the final, really provocative question at the heart of this material. Has the focus on identity become a real force for progress, or is it turned into a kind of counterproductive game? One that creates its own set of winners and losers, all while distracting us from other big issues? That's the core question we'll leave you to think about.